right, so I'm going to give y'all a moment to go ahead and grab a seat if you wouldn't mind. I'll be before you in about 15 to 20 minutes. I'll be before you about 15 to 20 minutes. If I can get your attention, I would appreciate that. Thank you. So a quick, I guess, adjustment to the pronunciation of my name. It's Jere'My. It's pronounced Jere'My. It's perfectly okay. So I get it all the time. So it's spelled like Jere'My, but it's pronounced Jere'My. Jere'My Rankins. I'm a licensed professional counselor, but I wasn't always a licensed professional. So at 17, I caught my first felony. At 19, I caught my second one. I was sentenced to 5 years in prison, Texas Department of Criminal Justice. When I got sentenced, I had a scholarship to play football. I was a beast. I'm sorry, I keep moving around for the camera. I'm trying to stay in one place, but I'm used to doing groups, and so I moved around. So I had a scholarship to play football. I was out there in Cisco, Texas, killing it. I was a beast. I ran a 4.3 40, and back in 2003, he was doing something. Now, I mean, they're doing it a lot in the NFL, but back in 2003, they weren't running that before. And so I had a lot of potential. So when I got sentenced to that 5 years, I was sitting on the top bunk and I was crying, the loudest cry, but you couldn't hear me, because I had a cellmate down below. I wasn't on the I was crying. I got sentenced to 5 years. I said, what am I going to do? After the grieving process ended, it took me about a day or two, because you got to snap back. You're getting ready to do some time. All that sulking and all that feeling sorry for yourself, you got to shake that off and get your mind right. It was a paradigm shift. I said, man, what am I going to do? I said, man, when I get out of prison, I'm going to come back better than I ever was. I'm going to get out of prison, and I'm going to be able to sell myself to anyone. I taught myself Spanish. I can sell myself to anybody. I can walk into any job interview and get the job. And so when I was in prison, I taught myself Spanish. I spent the first 3 years learning Spanish, using old retired textbooks from the 90s. Ven conmigo. I taught myself politics. I got my first 2 years of college out the way. When I came home in 2009, I had an overwhelming desire to stop the pipeline from schools to prison, because it exists. I wanted to stop foster care kids from going to prison. So in my private practice today, I've got a business. It's called Minor to Major LLC, helping people turn their minor setbacks into major comebacks. And I believe that everybody has the potential to turn their minor setbacks into a major comeback, like I did. And so that's what I teach. That's what I talk about. I talked about earlier a paradigm shift. There was a change, a momentum, something that switched. I said, man, I've got to do something about this. And so when I was encouraged to speak about this pandemic, we don't do good with change. And that's what the pandemic was. That's all it was. We don't do good with the mask. You see the fights on the news. It's change. We don't like it. Rules at home. I've been doing this the whole time. Now I got to do this. We don't do good with change. At the workplace, oh my gosh, we don't like change. That's what the pandemic did. What is the ethnicity? What's race? It's really ethnicity, but what is the race that leads this country in mental illness? What race is that?
African Americans.
African Americans. African Americans. Blacks. Why do you think that is?
Because it was once a taboo in our communities that it was something that only belonged to white folks. Or if a young man was acting out, it was, oh, he was just being a boy. When in all actuality, he might have been having some symptoms of bipolar.
That's good.
If it was
good. Let's think about trauma. What have we gone through with trauma? What is it? Slavery? Okay. Who else has been traumatized in this country? Besides Black African Americans, who else?
That's what we used to do. Go take a
Who else? What ethnicity? Indians, thank you. The Indians. So they are the second leading with mental illness. So what does that say? It says that we come from a traumatic background. If you go out to West Texas, where I went to my undergrad, where I played college football. You go out there, there's cotton fields out there. Never picked cotton, but I heard about my ancestors who did. And so every time I looked at those cotton fields, I remembered slavery. That's trauma. It's trauma. So we deal with trauma on a daily basis. When we go to school, we get educated, we are informed about our history from our parents, hopefully. We come into this game traumatized. And so we have so many things on top of us, so many things that are against us. We come at a disadvantage into this world. I'm here to tell you that life is not fair. We live in an unfair country. We see it on the news yesterday, 2 days ago. We see it all the time. It's not fair. Those who are most successful are able to deal with change. I was telling someone earlier today that for us to have true progress in this country, we have to create leaders. We have to create young leaders because law is king in this country. Law is primitive. It's most important. That's how we win. And so we need young leaders to be high-seating officials with an agenda to make change. Going back to the pandemic. You think about how has it affected you? Think about how it has affected the world. Now think about how negatively people have responded to it. Politicians. People fighting in the news, at the store, grocery store. You don't want to wear a mask at school. Think about it, it's because it's changed. I introduced myself, and I told my story at the very beginning, because when I was sentenced in prison to the 5 years, I told you I cried. There is appropriate grieving. Everybody needs to have those feelings and emotions. You need to let those out. There is a time and a place for that, a space. When that grieving space goes too long, that's when we go into depression. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's what we do with those emotions and feelings that becomes a problem, an issue. So anyways, when I sat in my cell the next day or so, I came out that cell, I said, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna come out of prison better than when I came in. I'm gonna be able to do this, I'm gonna be able to do that. You won't be able to miss me. Whether you're in a Corvette or a Jeep, I'm gonna switch gears and go the same speed. And I did that. But it's not because I'm just so awesome, I'm just so unique. It was a mindset. It was a mindset. It was a mind shift. It was a paradigm shift. A choice that I chose. I came from a good home, made bad mistakes. My parents are still married today, made good money. My mom was a flight attendant, my dad worked for the postal service. Did good. I chose the streets. I chose the band. You know what influenced me? The rap culture. Music, the rap industry. It really encouraged me. When I went to prison, I had a Fast and the Furious. This is when Fast and the Furious first came out. I had an Acura Integra, lowered, had the body kit, had screens in there, had PlayStation in there. PlayStation 1, I think. Sega Dreamcast. I don't know about that. Hey, I had that. Switching gears. What influences us? What influences you? Social media. What influences you? TikTok. That's what got me caught up. The rap music. I'm not blaming the rap. I'm not blaming the system. I'm not blaming nobody. Because we all have choices. At 17, it was my choice to rob that person. At 19, it was my choice to rob that store. Okay? But what really motivated me was getting the money. I wanted that money. I wanted to get that cash. I wanted the material stuff. And it led me down the wrong road. What influences you? Who influences you? What are you allowing to influence you? I did an activity earlier this week. I did an activity on values. What are the values? What are the values of the people that raised you? Your parents, hopefully. But if it's not parents, maybe it's adopted parents. Maybe it's foster care parents. Maybe it's auntie, a grandparent. What are their values? What do they talk about? What is most important to them? Okay, think about that. What about the values of the United States of America? What do they value? We always value, oh, this is the land of the free. This is the greatest country in the world. This is what they preach. This is brainwashing. This is what the United States has: power, authority. We've got the greatest military in the world. This is what we brag about. What else? Money. What else?
Capitalism.
What is it?
Capitalism.
Capitalism, right? It goes with power, money, law, control goes with power. Now think about your values. Typically, the values come from your parents. The values come from your environment. So those around you in this nation, this country we live in. Typically, that's where we get our values from. Along the way, sometimes they shift, they change. But for the most part, it's our home upbringing and it's our environment. That's where we get our values from. When I went to prison, I fell back on my core values. Core values are embedded deep inside of you. They typically don't change ever. I went back to praying. I remember my mom, she used to walk around the house, speaking in tongues, crying, cleaning up on a Saturday. I didn't understand. I'm finna go get this lick. She tripped. When I went to prison, I fell back on those values. I remember who I was. And so the two populations that I really hone in on are single parent moms who are raising boys specifically and foster care youth. Because foster care youth, within 3 years of them aging out of the system, they're more likely to go into incarcerated facilities. So I hone in on that population. Other populations, single parent boys, especially minorities, minority young men, Black and brown kids more specifically. They're the most at risk of going to prisons and jails, institutions. And so I come out here to make an impact, influence those specific youth. That's what I'm here for. Everybody else, you have the power to turn your minor setbacks into major comebacks. Everybody does. Everybody does. When we think about mental illness, we think about, it's not the stigma of mental illness, it's the stigma of being weak. That's where the stigma comes from. And so there's been so many advocates out there, oh, it's not weakness, it's not that. Mental illness is a weakness. It is a weakness. Depression is a weakness. If my mom passed away today, and I don't want to trigger anybody, if my mom passed away today, I'd be weak. I'd be real weak. I'd be real weak. And I would need some help to be strong. And who would I lean on? My wife. Who else would I lean on? My brother. Who else would I lean on? My support system. And I would need help from my mentor in Miss Lady Hell. I would need help. That's where the stigma comes from. It's the weakness. And in our culture, in minority cultures, we're scared to admit that we're weak. That's where the stigma comes from. But going back to the pandemic, y'all, if you are able to adapt to change, it's adaptability. Being able to switch it on and off. Okay, so I'm gonna have to do this. Okay, so I'm gonna have to think of ways to. When you're able to embrace change, that's when you're gonna learn how to be successful. It's not gonna be hard. It's not gonna be hard. No, I don't wanna brag on myself. But we also have to learn how to delay immediate self-gratification. It's not gonna come 6 months. It's not gonna come in a year. Took me 10, 11 years before I was fully licensed after I came home in 2009. And now I'm off to the races. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. Can't stop. We all have the power to turn our minor setbacks into major comebacks. Starts with mindset. Starts with you having the mindset, change the mindset to embrace that change. Embrace it. Jere'My Rankins.